Spirit, lead me where my trust is without.
Hello there, my name is Dixon Musake. I am a servant of Christ, and today I'm going to talk about what it means to fear God. But first, a story. In case you're wondering about my beard, well, you're not the only one. My sister wondered about it when I went to visit her recently. So I went to her home and she hadn't seen me in a few months. And she looked at me and said, "Whoa, mister, you look like John the Baptist." And then she pretended as if she was going through her fridge and looking for locusts and honey. So if you read the Bible, you will realize that John the Baptist was a prophet who was sent to before Jesus to announce Jesus is coming. And John's diet was locusts and honey. And Sheila was being obviously funny. And you know, if you're a Christian, you realize all good things come from God, including humor. But what Sheila didn't realize is that, in fact, John the Baptist is similar to the mission that Jesus gave me when he told me to start this work. So perhaps Sheila didn't realize that she was speaking prophetically. So anyway, on to today's message. So about fearing God, the basic thing that is going on here is that a lot of Christians today do not realize what fearing God is. So to start it off is that when you get your Bible and you open it and you read, you will see in some places the name of the Lord, that is Lord, and it's in capital letters. Now that represents the personal name of God. It's based on the Hebrew tetragrammaton, which is YHWH. In modern day, it's pronounced as Yahweh or Jehovah. Now that name appears about 6,800 times in the Hebrew Old Testament. And tradition says from a Jewish scholar that every time a scribe was going to write that name, they would have a bath. So it means these people are taking baths 6,800 times. And the reason that is important is because obviously in our generation today it doesn't seem to be that way. But obviously the reason why you have the Lord in the Bible that we have in the English version is because when the translators were translating the Bible, almost like out of respect for the name of God, they replaced his personal name with the Lord. And this is fundamentally important as a background to why we should understand what it means to fear God. And I'm just going to read from the Bible and give you examples of how people in the Old Testament encountered God, because interestingly you'll find that every time people encountered God, they trembled. Let me read for you a few things and you can see for yourself. So this first example here is coming from the book of Exodus, from chapter 19, from verse 16 to 19. I'm reading from the NIV. And what is happening here is, this is just before the children of Israel were going to receive the Ten Commandments from God. And so this is how it goes about. So it came about on the third day, when it was morning, that there was thunder and lightning, flashes and a thick cloud upon the mountain, and a very loud trumpet sound, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. Here's another example. Now this one here is from the book of Isaiah, and I'm taking this from Isaiah chapter 6 from verse 1 to 5. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. So that was Isaiah responding to his vision of God. So this is the third example, and this one here is taken from the book of Daniel, chapter 10, from verse 4 to 10. So Daniel was a Jewish man who had been taken into exile in Babylon, that is modern day Iraq region, and Daniel was one of the high-ranking government officials. So this is his description. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision. Those who were with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves. So I was left alone, gazing at this great vision. I had no strength left. My face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. Then I heard him speaking, and as I listened to him, I fell into a deep sleep, my face to the ground. A hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. So, if you can see in all those instances, every time God came to man, they were in fear, they were trembling. So, it is against this backdrop that if you go into the New Testament, when Jesus is teaching his disciples to pray, the first line of the Lord's Prayer he said, pray like this: Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Now you see, this is a radical teaching that Jesus was telling them, because he's saying our Father, which means Abba in the old Hebrew. Abba is the same as saying daddy, our daddy who is in heaven. Now this is a radical teaching for the disciples, because Jesus is telling them that call Yahweh, the one who the Jews knew about, who they used to tremble when they read, when they read the accounts of their ancestors, they were seen trembling. Jesus is telling them that they should indeed address him as our Father. And this is this is what many of us in our generation see. We see the New Testament, and we see God as our Father and our friend. And indeed, he is our Father and our friend. But if you understand the background, you would realize that it is actually a privilege for him to be your friend, because the God you are encountering is holy. So holy that the angels in his presence, in Isaiah's account, the seraphim, if you think about it, the account said the sound of the voices of the seraphim, when they spoke, the doorposts shook. Okay, and the whole temple was filled with smoke. But these seraphim, okay, who were so powerful, as you can see in the account, they are covering their faces with their wings and they're calling out to one another. And that is the God who basically we are seeing. And I guess what I'm saying is we should approach God as a friend, for indeed he wants to be a friend. But we should also approach him with awe, which is a mixture of fear, wonder, and amazement. And perhaps that is why in the book of Proverbs, in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, the writer rightly says, and this is what they say: the fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge. And in another version, which I commonly knew as a child, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So how should you then respond to the fear of God in our generation today, knowing full well that we should approach his throne boldly in the time of need, and yet at the same time we should know that he is a holy God? One of the ways is through our prayers, and in our prayers we should reflect indeed that God is holy. And the same Lord's Prayer which Jesus gave, not something to just be recited mindlessly, it was a model prayer. Jesus correctly started off by saying, this is how you should pray: Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. By saying hallowed be thy name, that is an act of worship, and you are showing God that you worship him. And so prayer starts with worship. Once I got this revelation from Jesus about the importance of this, my prayers changed, and I often find that when I am praying, I pray with this in mind. So for example, some of my prayers I'll often start by declaring, and I'm praying on my own, but I'll declare, holy, holy, holy are you, Lord Almighty, the great I am, the first and the last. And when you pray that way, it shifts your perspective. It makes you realize that, this is a holy God you're praying to. The second way you could reflect the fear of God is in your giving. And you should recognize that virtually it's God who enables us to have wealth and everything we have. In fact, let me read to you what he boldly declares. So this one here is in Psalms chapter 50 from verse 9 to 12. And this is what God says: I have no need of a bull from your stall, or of goats from your pens, for every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird of the mountains, and the insects in the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine, and all that is in it. So you realize that when you see things this way, you actually realize everything that you hold dear to you, your money, your health, your wisdom, your beauty, your intelligence, everything, your physical strength, your long life, it is a gift from God, and it's on loan to you. And so how should you be a good steward of God's wealth? And in our generation today, we are used to, we're a generation of superheroes. You have there Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, you have Loki is a god, Thor is a god, and you have Iron Man is a form of a god with his supercomputer Jarvis. And so we are all about me. We seem to be super sufficient. We seem to be invincible. But in fact, once you start focusing on the fear of the Lord being the beginning of wisdom, you will change perspective. So it is your turn. What will you do differently now that you know about this? So for example, in your own songs of worship and praise, how will you do it? And what about obedience now that you know that God is holy? Perhaps when you read the Bible, be more obedient. Think about it. Let me know. You can write to me. You can find the notes to this video on the website. And I hope this blesses you. Peace.